今天跑不了了，我要折磨你，我要你一件一件慢慢的死。
Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. Let's jump right into the video. We are here today to talk about a movie that has a very shiny slipcase. So let's see what it looks like on the, yeah, you get a lot of like this rainbow sparkling coming off of this. It's a silver, like embossed, super shiny slipcase. But anyway, the movie is Lady with a Sword. This was released in 1971. This is a Shaw Brothers film. This is an 88 films release. So I believe October 15th of 1971 was the original release date of this film. And then 88 Films put out the Blu-ray on April 22nd of 2025. This is a relatively recent release. It was directed by Cao Pao Shu, who, like a lot of the narrative surrounding this film that I've seen online with like reviews and publicity material that's gone out and stuff like that, as it was directed by a woman, which was rare for Shaw Brothers and those types of martial arts films in general at the time. And it was her first film, which is also interesting because it's a really well done film with particular regard to like story and character and stuff like that. And I'll get into that in a minute when I talk about my thoughts on the film. Lily Ho is in this movie. And you get this shiny slipcase when you buy this release from 88 Films, and then it pops out and you see this here on the inside. This is Kung Fu Bob artwork, which I was really excited about when I saw. This is region A and B, which you may be able to see at the bottom there. So you can pick this up in either place, and then you open it up here, and there's the disc. And that is a poster, which I will show you. And then when you pop the disc out, there is reversible cover art, but it did feel a little bit like heresy to reverse Kung Fu Bob, even though I do have the slipcover, which has the same artwork on it. But there you go. And then if you want to see the poster, I shall unfold that for you as well. It's not going to be terribly shocking if you've seen the two types of artwork that are already included in there, or the two pieces of artwork, I guess, that are already included. So you get that there, hell yeah. And then you get on the other side this. So I was pretty much totally unfamiliar with this film until this release came out, and I've gotten a bunch of releases recently, both Hong Kong and Japanese movies, and a lot of them have been like old school martial arts movies like Shaw Brothers and other kind of like independent old school martial arts films. And so I was having a hard time deciding what I should be reviewing and focusing on watching first. And when I did the pickups video recently of Hong Kong movies that have come in, a couple people either responded to the video or messaged me or texted me or whatever and said, Lady with the Sword is really good, and I think you'd really like that. Maybe you should check it out. And then we were discussing it in the Discord for the Patreon too. So shout out to our patrons who helped me make this decision to review this film. A couple of people on Patreon had heard about the film and were interested in it, and they'd been hearing people say things about it. So I was like, okay, let's check it out. So I just kind of threw it on a whim. And it's a really, really good movie, but for different reasons than you might expect a Shaw Brothers film to be really good. This is not like a Chang Che style bloodbath movie. There is blood in this movie. It's used very effectively in certain scenes, and I was like really excited about it. There's actually, when I was taking my notes while I was watching the movie, one of my notes was just blood exclamation point, because there's this really amazing massive sword fight in the movie where there's actually two fights taking place simultaneously on either side of this wall around this it's like a brothel. And there's some blood earlier in the movie, but it's not like, there's not tons of it and it's not super graphic. And then in that scene, there's like a moment where a character stabs like a bunch of people and all this blood sprays out. I was like, whoa, yes. So we're getting blood in this movie. Hell yeah. So to give you a basic plot overview, and then I'll get into my thoughts on the movie. The movie starts with a woman and her son traveling home. And we find out that the father/husband has died. And he was actually a famous, like locally famous guy who was kind of like a hero, who was killed by a bandit whose name, I actually wrote this down, was Ghosthead, and he's like a knife throwing bandit guy. And so they're going home to be with the family, and the woman they're accosted by other like bandit type characters, and the woman is killed and left dead in this field, and the child manages to escape, go home, and he tells the sister of the woman who passed away, who's his aunt, everything that happened. And she happens to be like an absolutely badass, amazing martial artist. And she's like, I'm getting revenge. What makes this movie so interesting is that there are I'm going to do a spoiler section at the end of this review because I don't want to throw major spoilers into like the main part of the review in case you haven't seen this film and you don't want it to be spoiled. There are complications that make her mission very difficult from a moral standpoint. She does not have trouble from a physical standpoint of like finding this person and getting ready to kill them. There are moral complications that arise. And what I loved about this movie is that not just the main character, but as the movie goes along and the story evolves and you find out more things about these characters, multiple characters have to make extremely difficult decisions. And a lot of the film is about how they make those decisions, what those decisions are, what like social and personal factors are impacting those decisions, and then what the consequences of those decisions are and who has to live with those consequences. And one of the things I loved about this movie is, you know, like oftentimes as a writer, I'll watch like an action movie and I'll really enjoy it. But then when the movie's done, I'm like, those people are going to be traumatized for like the rest of their fucking lives by like everything that happened to them, right? And all these people who died and like all the violence that they witnessed, all these brutal things that took place and shit like that, right? And that's a factor of like the moral and emotional toll of violence, the act of revenge, things like that is in a lot of films, I think, especially like old school martial arts films, right? Is not something that people sit around thinking and talking about. They just act. And then, you know, probably, you know, assuming that these characters were real people, at some point later in their lives, they probably sit down and reflect on it and stuff like that. But it's not really like the soul of the piece, right? The soul of the piece is the violence, the martial world, the need for revenge, like, you know, sworn oaths and things like that, right? So what I really loved about this movie is that it's focus, I would say even more so than the violence, the focus is on actions, consequences, decision making, morality, and the complex web of like social and personal factors that impact all of that. There is really fun fighting in this film. There's not it's not, you know, if you're a fan of like more recent stuff like The Raid or like Jackie Chan or which is even though Jackie Chan those movies were in the 80s and 90s, this is 1971, right? So this is very early. This is very much old school fighting, like almost wuxia style, like people are jumping over walls and jumping onto roofs and like, you know, things of that nature. Great sets, like always in Shaw Brothers films, great costumes, and and actually, so something else I can talk about, I think, without spoiling anything before I go to the spoiler section of the review. There's a character here who plays kind of like a bodyguard, and for I would say about half of the movie, you kind of think that he's just there. He's like a henchman, basically, and then you find out he has this whole backstory that no one in the movie knows anything about. And that he really kind of has his own motivations for why he's doing what he's doing. And those motivations end up tying into what's going on in the story in a way that makes sense and is logical. It's not like one of these things where it happens and you're like, what? It's like one of these things where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so this is a very well thought out piece in terms of who are these people and how are they maneuvering through the world of this. It's almost like this movie is more story than plot. And I know that sounds like probably a pretentious or like very nuanced thing to say, but this is not a movie where it's like, these are all the plot points we have to hit. So we will reverse engineer character motivation and events and all of these things to make sure we hit these plot points, right? This is a movie where you have a setup, which is that somebody dies, someone wants revenge, people are thrown into conflict, and then the story evolves organically through the actions and decisions of the characters and does a very good job of telling you who all those people are so that everything makes sense and follows in a logical way, right? And I've been very lucky to have watched I watched this movie 2 days ago, and then last night I watched the final Battles Without Honor and Humanity film, which is fucking incredible. But those are very character-driven films in a lot of ways too, because the evolution of the story is dictated by the decisions of the people more so than, if you were to see like a very tightly engineered espionage film or something like that, what the way that I would imagine most films like that are written is you come up with a series of events that you want to happen, and then you figure out how to fit all of your characters and world into those events so that you have this story. And these films are kind of the other way. It's like, here is an event that happens. How do these people react to it to create the rest of the events of the film? And I think it's really mature, intelligent, high level craft and art as writing, storytelling, and then the way that it's acted, the way it's directed, just a very well done film. Now, this film, because it is focused more so on decisions, excuse me, morality, consequences, it plays more like a drama than it plays like a violent revenge film. So like I said, if you're like looking for like a Chong Che type film, or you're looking for more of like a hard hitting, fast Donnie Yen type of, like, this is not that. This is like an old school martial arts film from the early 70s that has that style of pacing and things like that. It's not slow by any means, but it's not like a hard hitting, brutal, violent, remorseless kind of film. It's more of like a drama in which characters live in a world of violence. And in that respect, honestly, it does kind of feel like, even though it's, female led, and heroic bloodshed films are very often very male dominated and about fraternal relationships and stuff like that, there's an element of this film that feels a bit like a heroic bloodshed film because it is about morality, decision making, character, consequence, like in the same way that John Woo and Ringo Lam, in their best films, movies like Wild Search, City on Fire, A Better Tomorrow, The Killer, Hard Boiled, like those are really dramas about people in worlds of violence. I think A Better Tomorrow and Wild Search especially, but also City on Fire is very much like that. The Killer, like, they're character dramas in which the characters are enmeshed in a world of violence because they're cops and criminals and stuff like that. So I'm going to do a little spoiler section here, so you can, if you can turn this off. But as you can tell, I thought this was a phenomenal film, and it was really unexpected. And I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy that this came out. I'm very happy to have this release. So, spoilers. The main woman who is going on this revenge mission finds out that the guy who killed her sister is the guy to whom she is betrothed. And she has been betrothed to him since she was a little kid. She hasn't seen him in years, but the parents arranged the marriage, right? So that's one level of complication, right? And what you kind of think like, well, okay, she hasn't seen this guy since she was a kid. I get that she is betrothed to him, but like her sister must mean a lot to him, blah blah. Then you then find out that the dads, like her dad and his dad, served in the military together. So they're like old friends, and these families have really close ties. But even more than that, the dad of the guy who killed her sister saved her dad's life. So he owes that man like an enormous debt that can essentially never be repaid because he's alive and these children are alive because he saved his life. So this woman who's going on this revenge mission is only alive because the father of the man who killed her sister saved her dad. And so you get not only these personal complications of her feeling very conflicted about this because she knows that she's supposed to marry this guy, and she knows that their families are really close, and she knows there will be enormous fallout from that, but the social contract of like, they were in the military together, the one saved the other one's life. And then as the film progresses, you learn, for instance, that the parents of the guy who's the killer, right? His mom has blind allegiance to the son. She's like, he can never do anything wrong. And maybe he killed someone, but it was a mistake. Maybe he didn't do it on purpose. Like, I will never let anyone take or hurt my son. The dad is like, he's kind of a dick. Like, he's a spoiled brat. He's an asshole. I totally believe that he killed this innocent woman because he was being an asshole out there with his asshole friends. Like, the dad is sympathetic towards the victim. And the mom is like, fuck that shit. I don't want to hear that. And my son is the only thing that matters. So you get conflict within the family. And then the parents of the woman who's going on the revenge mission, who are also the parents of the woman who died, right? They're out of town. So she can't go to them for advice. So she's kind of just like stranded with her nephew, trying to protect him, trying to decide what to do about this thing, but without anyone to seek advice or guidance or wisdom from, right? Which complicates her mission. And I just remembered that there's some of this movie really reminds me of Come and See. So if you're a fan of King Hu, I think you'll really like this movie. There's one scene in particular that's very reminiscent of Come and See. You know the scene in Come and See where there's like they're in the main character's in like a hotel and people are like coming into the hotel and there's like assassination attempts and like people are running across rooftops and stuff. It's a very similar scene in this film. So so you have those complications. Now, I said there's a bodyguard. Earlier in the review, I mentioned there's this bodyguard character who has his own motivations and stuff like that, right? The bodyguard character is the bodyguard of the killer, the guy who kills the sister, right? He is a former bandit who has done very bad things, who became a bodyguard essentially to go into hiding because he was wanted by the authorities. He is really good friends with the ghost head guy who killed the husband of the woman who died. So this woman who's on a revenge mission, let's remember it's not just that her sister died. Her brother-in-law died, who was much beloved by the family and like a local hero. He was killed by a bandit who is allied with the guy who killed her sister, right? So then the ghost head guy and the bodyguard guy are like, well, if we if we can set this up so that, X, Y, and Z people die, we can like effectively take over this whole area, right? So then they have their own little plot, but all of it makes sense and it all ties together organically. It makes sense that all these people would be in the same place and in the same region. It would have all these conflicting allegiances and that like it's a very organic, logical plot. There's never a moment in this film where you're like, yeah, I don't know about that, right? But it's very high level. I would say high level creative thinking and really good the craft of writing and the art of writing are both manifested at a very high level here. And what I mean by that is the craft is all of these pieces in this story that link together that make this kind of matrix that forms the center of the piece, right? The art of it is finding that emotional core, which is the decisions, the consequences, the social obligations, the personal desires, the way that those things conflict and how the characters deal with it and like the sadness, the confusion, the tension that is manifest from that. So it's both really high level craft and really high level artistry coming together. And it's just a really fucking stellar film. So the movie is Lady with a Sword. You are watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. My name is Will. As always, we thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments and about this Blu-ray release and what else you're excited for that's coming up. And we'll see you next time.